Welcome back to the Sports on the Bay podcast, where we highlight the people, programs, and conversations shaping youth sports in our community. Today's guest is someone bringing a much needed blend of performance training, injury prevention, and a real world coaching experience to local athletes. Kristen is a performance physical therapist, strength coach, and girls JV head soccer coach at Crofton High School. She works with youth, high school, college, and semi pro soccer athletes and was recently recognized as a U.S. soccer preferred provider. Kristen combines one on one physical therapy care with strength and movement training to help athletes stay healthy and perform at their best. She also still plays competitively herself, which gives her perspective not only as a clinician and coach, but as an athlete still living in it. Today, we're talking about youth athlete development, injury prevention, soccer training, and what families should know as sports continue to get more competitive. Welcome, Kristen. We're glad you're here.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome. I always like to start at the beginning because every great program usually starts with seeing a need that maybe wasn't being met. And what led you to start Integrated Fitness and Rehab? And were there any gaps you were seeing in the youth sports or maybe even the physical therapy world that needed to be addressed?
Yeah, definitely. About 10 years ago, I graduated from physical therapy school. And at that time, if you would have asked me about starting my own physical therapy practice or doing my Soccer Strong program, I probably would have told you I was not doing that. However, about 5 years ago, I was starting to get burnt out from an outpatient orthopedic PT clinic. I've always wanted to provide the one-on-one care that my patients deserve, but I was having to see more and more patients an hour, and I was taking away from the direct interaction with the PT and the patient interaction care that I wanted. I decided to side hustle this business for about a year while I was still working full time at my old office. And it was those gaps that I started to see that I needed to take on and go full in on my own business. And that's where I started to see the more injuries happening with my youth athletes, and I wasn't able to provide the care that I was wanted to be able to do with those athletes at my old job. Now that I'm working more in a one-on-one basis of care with and treatment with these athletes, this is the quality of care that I wanted to be able to give to them. The other thing that I was starting to see is the gaps is that a lot of times traditional physical therapy, we're more focused on the pain and just trying to get them cleared and back out to the field. And we sometimes stop them short of the actual return to sport performance. And there was also at times not true objective testing or benchmarks that I wanted to be able to meet because we're so rushed in the clinic itself. Then the other thing too with the youth sports that what we see is the gap as well is that a lot of times we were seeing the skill development of these athletes. However, their physical development was not there and they were starting early sports specialization without looking at them long-term athlete development. We were starting to see a lot faster kids, but they couldn't decelerate. And that's where they were starting to get some of those injuries. And then we were also seeing a lot of these athletes nowadays they look good at certain ages until the game starts to speed up. And that's where they started lacking behind. And that's where those injuries were starting to happen. That's why I started Integrated Fitness and Rehab and started my Soccer Strong program is I wanted to bridge the gap of performance physical therapy and the performance side of seeing them long term and allowing them once they got discharged from physical therapy, they can end up continuing on the performance side to make sure they stay on the field.
Yeah, that's great. You were an athlete yourself?
Yeah, a little bit about me is I've played soccer since I was 5. I danced from when I was 3 to 16. And then at 16, I gave up dance and went full in on soccer, even though I was playing soccer year round before. Played club soccer. I still play soccer today in a women's league.
Okay.
I coach, like you said in the beginning, I coach high school soccer as well. All that soccer background to me. And I experienced 2 injuries. I had surgery at the age of 16 on my knee, and then I dislocated my ankle and broke my leg at 22. And that carried me into the physical therapy world. And then that's where I wanted to be able to provide that to my youth athletes of knowing that if you continue to strength train and do a lot of this stuff earlier on, you're less likely to get injured at the end of the day.
Yeah, I think families really appreciate hearing the why behind the business, especially when it comes from wanting to solve a real problem. There are a lot of places families can go, as you are aware. I think it's important to understand what makes your approach a little bit different. Can you talk about, you talk a lot about the one-to-one, one-on-one care. What does that look like, practically speaking, for a family that might want to work with
Be
you?
looking around.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So the one-on-one care for me that I provide in the practice is really important because from the moment the client walks through the door, I even get on the phone call with the parent or the general population person. They, at the end of the day, know that I am there to be part of their treatment plan from the start to the finish. 1 hour, one-on-one sessions. We're together. Every decision making, every exercise, every progression, regression is always built around that specific individual. I'm not trying to bounce around to multiple patients at once in a clinic because that allows me to build the trust with that client and with that athlete to let them know that we are part of a team
Mhm.
and we're here to get better together. I'm not just here, you're just not another number in the clinic to me. I want to see you have the same success because that success makes me happy at the end of the day. And everything is individualized to that athlete and to that patient to make sure that there's no cookie cutter programs out there. And I'm able to constantly keep eyes on them and reassess and assess and reassess and be like, okay, how does this feel? Does this feel better doing it this way versus sending them off? I'm going to use sometimes in an outpatient clinic is you'll be passed off to a tech who knows what you're doing over in the one area. Whereas here I'm with you that full time and we can
Mhm.
always change things up based on what goals you're trying to meet. And I'll clear you when you've earned those results versus just saying that with basic insurance, oh, you've met your visit limit for the year and we can no longer see you anymore, but you've never met your goals. But I want you to be able to go back and pick up your grandkid. I want you to be able to go back, play soccer, but who knows, you might end up back in my office because you never got fully cleared
Okay.
at the end of the day.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's really valuable for families, especially today. As a parent myself, having more individualized care is important, and having that
Mhm.
point of contact with you from start to finish is extremely helpful, especially as you're trying to get healthier and stronger. One thing
Absolutely.
that we see in youth sports, they're getting more competitive. The year-round model is really getting stronger. I
Definitely.
really wanted to focus a little bit about what are the biggest injury risks you're seeing right now in youth athletes? And maybe I mean I know you work with a wide array of athletes, but maybe even just like typically in the soccer world, maybe you see a little bit more of a consistent theme there. I'd be curious to hear your thoughts.
So definitely the biggest injury risk that I'm seeing is obviously ACL injuries. It's been a big research in the soccer world right now, especially with female athletes in the professional standpoint of why so many female athletes are more likely to tear their ACLs in their knees. That's a big one. I've had the youngest as age of 11
Wow.
that has had their ACL torn. And in my generation growing up, I don't remember ever hearing of an ACL tear until people got closer into college,
Hmm.
professional leagues. But now you're starting to hear these younger and younger kids, they're getting one ACL torn and then they go back, they return to sport too early and then they end up re-tearing the same one or even the opposite one. The other thing I'm seeing a lot of is just chronic knee pain that they're having just because, like you said, they're playing sport year round and there's so many games, so many practices, things that you look at a practice field, half the time the girls have so much KT tape on their thighs, on their knees. It's all because they're going through growth spurts, but their demand of their sport is so high, but their
Hmm.
supply and their muscles are so weak that they're not able to meet that supply and demand ratio. The other things that I'm seeing too is it's called Seaver's disease. I don't know if a lot of people know about that, but it's just heel pain almost. As the kids start to go through growth spurts, you start to see that pulling on the Achilles there. And with the soccer, they're constantly running and sprinting and cutting and pivoting. And they parents just think, oh, it's growth spurts, they'll grow out of it. But that too much volume and that overuse with the lack of the foundation and the strength, and sometimes rushing back to return to play or playing through it too much, those are where those injury risks are constantly. Sometimes those small little pain symptoms are factors that in turn are going to end up being big injuries at the end of the day.
Yeah. Well, that brings up an interesting point because I feel I see this a lot through things that I've read online, but also just on social media. There's a common question that keeps coming up about strength training. And I know that you're a strength coach. I think that's great. I think we need more of them who can start educating parents on when is the right time to start thinking about strength training. And not to go off on
Hmm.
too much of a tangent, I think back to my athletic years, I don't think I started strength training basically till high school. And honestly, we didn't have the same resources as we do
No.
now. But I do remember eventually going to the collegiate level, and I had been strength training for 4+ years. And it was at that point that our strength coach was like, "You're not going to touch a single weight. You're going to hold PVC pipe and you're going to these over and
Hmm.
over until you can show me that the form, you're not
Hmm.
going to be picking up any weights." And I just, strength training is great, but it could also lead to more injury if not done well. I guess I'm
Correct.
just curious. I know you're helping kids get developed in this area, but would love to hear a little bit more about how you when you start working with kids.
I usually don't start working with kids until about the age of 10. And that's A, for maturity level, starting to go through growth spurts. they can also understand and be safe in the gym setting a little bit. However, parents obviously want their kids starting as young as they can to get the next step ahead about the next kid on their team. Usually at ages 7 to 10, I tell parents, build that foundation, let kids be kids and learn how to move
Hmm.
properly. What you were saying there is the form and the foundations are so important. Usually at that age is when I tell people to work on balance, coordination skills. Can these kids jump? Can they skip? Can they play tag with each other? Those are the fundamentals that a lot of times kids are going to build at a younger age that in turn are going to help them win the strength world as they start to get older and more mature and go through those growth spurts. Because I'll tell you today, there's many kids that I see in my Soccer Strong program. I ask them to try to jump off 2 feet, land on 2 feet, or try to do jump roping. They can't skip. They can't do anything like that because they've never built the foundations in the beginning. So I'm almost backtracking them sometimes because they've never built the strong foundations. But wait, when you were asking about ideally the start time that I do is 10 to 14,
Okay.
but there's different ages and obviously I try to make it more or less around I meet the athlete where they're at. So not necessarily so one athlete may be more advanced and they have the form down and I'll give them weights. But the first couple, like first month or so, I make sure these kids are doing their foundations are there, their form is correct. I don't care about adding weights to you because if you can't do something correctly without weights, you're more likely to get hurt at the end of the day. And you're just going through the motion just to go through the motion. I would say 10 to 14 is a good time frame because that's where growth spurts are starting to happen. They're playing against better competition. Their practices and their field time and competitions and overall playing time is a lot more. So that's
Hmm.
where developmentally that's going to help supplement all their skill work and practices and games.
Right. You've built some programs at your facility that can you walk us through the Youth Foundations program?
Mhm.
And then does that lead to the Soccer Strong program? Is that sort of an entryway
Yeah.
into it?
Correct. Yeah. So Youth Foundations program, I start again, it doesn't start until the age of 10. And I usually do 10 to 13-year-olds is what is in this group here, because that's usually it's for a lot of times the first time people that have never worked out before, they're just getting into it. And then some of my kids that are even in this program, parents will want them to just be more active and they're not necessarily an athlete for a sport, but they want to get them so they can start working on body composition, just overall just being healthier. For all sports is what my Youth Foundations program is. And then this is where we just work on the basics of strength training is the big focus I said just a minute ago is on the mechanics before putting any weights in their hands, working on their coordination skills, working on balance, working on landing mechanics to make sure that their knees aren't falling inward because of weak hips. And at the end of the day, all the skills, I'm trying to work on all the skills that a lot of these athletes are missing from only playing one specific sport year round. This is what I'm seeing as well is that a lot of these kids develop only their sports skills, but they lack some of these other underlying skills. We end up making games out of some of these things. And that's what I'm trying to build is that foundation skill set
Hmm.
to be able to promote them into the next group. And it does transition. A lot of those kids will, if they come in for an assessment and I know that they're more advanced, I'll put them in through a Youth Foundations program, work out for 1 or 2 visits. And if I see that, hey, you guys are way more advanced and I need you to be in this group,
Hmm.
I'll move you into the Soccer Strong program.
Okay. Can you talk a little bit about Soccer Strong? Did the age groups expand a little bit more there, or are you in that 10 to 13 range?
No. So yeah, Soccer Strong is my passion, obviously, because of me being a performance physical therapist, obviously a high school soccer coach for girls soccer. And then I'm also still playing soccer in a women's league.
Hmm.
I bring all those components together that I see on a daily basis all into one. With my Soccer Strong program, it's ages 10 to 18. And then I have college kids that'll sometimes come back. I have a couple kids that are about to go off and play college soccer from my programs. Once they come back, I'll end up having a college program, but it's obviously still in the developmental stage. But the program was specifically built to make soccer players that all around athlete that they need to be, because as the demands of the sport keep getting higher now more than ever, these athletes I'm finding are so underprepared for that demand. And my goal with the program is to decrease that risk of getting injured and making them faster, stronger, more physical on the field to withstand those demands. And I always say that practices are great for the skill work, but if athletes can't cut, decelerate, go up for a head ball and come down safely, or say a goalkeeper goes up for a diving save and they're getting pushed off the ball constantly, that athlete's either going to end up in my clinic sooner or later, or they're going to end up quitting the sport because they're constantly injured and they just give up their hope on that. My goal is just to keep that athlete on the field as long as possible.
Yeah, and so mention the demand is a lot higher, and sometimes parents will often wait until something hurts, but there's probably a lot more they should know before that point. If a parent is listening and their child isn't injured, why should they still care about therapy? And like, what are the early signs a parent might be missing that their child needs support?
Absolutely. In Maryland, we're a direct access state, meaning that you don't have to have an injury or have a physical therapy referral to come see a physical therapist. I always say to parents and players and small talk that you go to the dentist for 2 times a year for yearly checkups. You get a yearly physical done, but why not get a yearly physical therapy movement assessment just to see if we can catch some of these underlying early onset symptoms that could possibly, if we treat them early enough before symptoms and pain end up happening, we could end up prolonging their athletic career at the end of the day. And some of those signs that I tell parents too to look out for is, are the kids going through a growth spurt? They're now super uncoordinated. They don't understand how their body's moving. They're more susceptible to possibly getting injured. We can teach them some ways of how to move with their new positioning of their body that can also help decrease their chances. I also say, look at their running form. Does their arms flailing all around away from their body as they're running? That could be a telltale sign of sometimes hip weakness in them. Do they walk with their toes turned in or toes turned out? I see a lot of kids walk feet completely turned out, and sometimes they end up with hip issues. This is a big one that I noticed too, and my parents come to me all the time. Hey, can you make my athlete faster? Can you make them stronger? Can you do this and that? Are they fatiguing quickly in games or not able to keep up with their better competition? A lot of parents will be like, just make them faster. They just need to run more. They just need to run more. But really, they're not able to, they don't need to run more. A lot of times they're not strong enough to withstand the demand of their sport, and that's why they're fatiguing.
Yeah, that's really interesting. When it comes to it, I guess like it could be someone who rehabbed with you or maybe even someone in your program, but can you share a story? You don't have to name any names or anything, but of an athlete who came in and you were able really to see a lot of transformation with their growth and their strength that you could share with us?
Yeah, absolutely. I might give one example from a PT standpoint, and
Okay.
then I'll give one from the soccer strong standpoint. Physical therapy, this athlete, female soccer, high school female soccer player. I was actually at her game, watched her tear her ACL. She rehabbed with me, transitioned her into the soccer strong program. She's been doing the soccer strong program she was one of my original soccer strong program athletes. And then she transitioned into that, and she works out year round. She does stuff on her own now at home as well. And she's also going off to play college soccer actually in the fall here at Lycoming College. So seeing her confidence of never working out before, now seeing her put in the time and the effort of a year round, I wouldn't let her go back to play soccer until she met those specific strength goals. Her confidence level improved, her body awareness improved with strength training and from the physical therapy standpoint. And then once she got into the performance standpoint and seeing her passion now to actually do the stuff outside of just coming to see me in the Soccer Strong program, and has allowed her to now go on and play soccer on the collegiate level, which is pretty cool to see. And then the other one that I've been posting a little bit about more and more regularly is she's been with me for 2 years. She's a middle school athlete, but she's one of my strongest athletes, and her confidence level. And when she goes home and tells her mom, hey mom, I benched she had 25-pound dumbbells in each arm, but the fact that she can do this in 7th grade is pretty crazy to me, but
Yeah.
she puts in the work and the effort. She comes in here, she's dedicated. It's cool to see the passion and the confidence and the growth that some of these athletes can get if they put in the hard work at the end of the day.
Yeah, absolutely. I think even thinking back to my own journey that I've tried to do other types of workouts, but I just always go back to the traditional weightlifting and plyometrics. I don't know, something
Yep.
ingrained in me. Whatever you're doing will probably stay with them for a lifetime. It's actually
Exactly.
great.
Don't fix something if it's not broken is what I tell them. Like,
Right.
we work the basics and we build upon the basics, and then that's what allows you to keep going where you're going. Like, it'll be exciting to see where my middle school kid, female athlete, ends up going on to high school and
Yeah.
what she ends up achieving after that.
That's great. We always keep things local because everything can look a little different to community. But how do you see youth sports evolving right here in Anne Arundel County? And do you think, I guess let's start on the positive note, what do you think we're getting right locally and maybe where do we need to improve?
I think some of the things where we're doing things that are well is that we have such a high participation. I feel a lot more athletes are participating in sports nowadays, and there's a lot of access and teams and clubs and organizations around the county that these athletes can participate in, whether it's a competitive environment, whether or not it's a rec team, or if they want to get on the super high club premier teams that can end up promoting them into more of a collegiate level. That's what I think is great going on around the county. And also too, the strength training now is being talked about more within organizations and is becoming more accepted for the youth athletes, which is great. However, there's obviously some downsides as well that we're trying to find now athletes I feel are playing one sport year round and trying to specialize at such a young age versus
Mhm.
being those multi-sport athletes that a lot of us were, and trying to shift towards more early competition and that try to be on the most competitive team. We have the best shot for college. Those are parents pushing those athletes in more and more and more demand for them. Those I feel would be more of the things that need to be improving, not making your kids play through pain and making that seem as the new normalcy. And sometimes letting these kids be kids and let them have rest and not give them too much volume in practices and schoolwork and go to this private trainer and then this next private training and thinking that more is better because at the end of the day, those kids are going to end up burning out.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially at the younger age. I feel I am really mindful of it with my kids, but
Mhm.
it's very easy to get
Get
caught
caught
up
up
to
in it.
think, oh, we have to be at this game or we can't miss this. And at the end of the day, they're going to play so many games in their lifetime. It's at 9, 10, 11. It doesn't matter in
Is
the
it
grand
worth
scheme.
it?
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's hard for parents, I feel like, too, at times. Sometimes it's the coaching staff that wants more and more and more. It's a balance between the parents and the coaches and us as physical therapists and strength coaches, trying to talk to coaches and let them understand that it's okay if you only have 2 practices a week and have the 3rd day be a strength day and you come into a gym setting, or you do let those kids have those days versus let's do 3 hours of practices 3 nights a week, and then they go and do games and showcases on the weekend. That's just too much at the end of the day for them
Yeah.
on their bodies.
Yeah, absolutely. Before we wrap this up, we ask every guest the same question. What is one thing from your childhood sports experience that still sticks with you today?
I have a few, but the one that I probably would still stick with today is my dad was my soccer coach from when I was a little kid, from pretty much 2nd grade all the way up through 8th grade. And we went to it's called a Arundel Cup. I don't even know if soccer still has a Arundel Cup soccer or not anymore. We were down no, we were tied, and there was, like, 50 seconds left in the game, and I scored a penalty kick, and I thought the clock was expiring before I ended up taking the penalty kick, and being able to raise a trophy with my teammates and have my dad as my coach, and that he still is in my life with all my soccer games and prioritizing soccer, and he played soccer in college. I think that's my highlight from my younger years of playing
Hmm.
sports and how it transfers over into as long as you work hard and you do what you're supposed to do, you can achieve pretty much anything.
Yeah, that's great. Well, this has been awesome. We will be sure to share your soccer strong program and the foundations program with our audience so they have access to that information, and if they want to follow you along, I know you have an Instagram page, we'll also tag
Mhm.
that, and also a great website
Great.
with a lot of information.
Perfect.
And thank you for sharing your perspective and for everything you're doing for athletes in the area, and to everyone listening, thank you for joining us. We will see you next time. Thank you, Kristen.
Thank you.